The USA is sending thousands of dangerous criminals and undocumented immigrants to El Salvador's mega prison, thanks to a deal between President Trump and President Bukele. Some are calling this smart policy, while others are calling this dangerous dystopian outsourcing. Today, I want to walk through what's actually happening, the incentives behind it, and whether or not this is the future or a massive step backwards. Let's dive into it. As you know, and as we've talked about before, El Salvador is in radical change. They obviously are the world's first kind of Bitcoin country, but I think we can all see President Nayib Bukele's master plan or main mission of functionally reducing crime and making El Salvador safer. I personally was just there. Last year, I took most of my family. I think I had 3 of my 4 kids, my wife, my mom. It felt very, very good. And I think lots of this is because of the crackdown on gangs. I mean, El Salvador became safer than the US in 2023. This is outrageous. This was at one point the murder capital of the world. Here we see a dramatic drop in murder. Tell me you think of El Salvador and Canada in the same safety, I'll call you insane. But that's the reality, and that's thanks, I mean, really in part, but probably mostly to the big crackdown on gangs. Here we have the prison population jumping over just 2 years, and this probably number is even going higher, where it tripled. The number of people imprisoned tripled in El Salvador between 2020 and 2022. And you might ask, well, what's the cost? How do they handle this massive increase? A tripling, 300% growth in prisoners in El Salvador. Well, the El Salvadorian way, build a mega prison.
Is it possible to get a tattoo like this if you're not a gang member?
No, you gotta kill.
You gotta kill to get those tattoos.
That is such a crazy thing for him. Look at this with the smile on his face. With a smile on his face. This is like the teardrop tattoos we have here in America. I think this goes to show what the culture of El Salvador was like when it was gang-ridden. And I think at that time especially, the government was overrun and massively corrupt by this gang culture that was in El Salvador.
How do you feel right now?
Gotta recognize that what happened to us is like that Titanic, that we were big and strong gangs, but we got hit with the iceberg.
Are you gonna be here the rest of your life?
Yeah, the rest of my life. We murdered a lot of people, and this is the consequence of what we did one day.
Good for him for recognizing that, hey, in the real world, actions have consequences. And I think for a long point in time, these gangs were able to live outside the consequences.
Like, try to act strong in the day and cry in the nighttime.
You cry at night?
Yeah, because we know that we're not gonna get out of here. It's a maximum security prison.
What was the gang that you were a part of?
MS-13.
Holy, that is wild. In the comments here we have, it may not be the fairest prison in the world, but the peace it brings for the innocent civilians of El Salvador serves justice far greater and promotes much more good in society. This is kind of the moral dilemma that you and I should have as outsiders looking in, as human beings. Is someone's suffering worth it for someone else's safety? What are the moral obligations? How should we be treating the most evil in a society? Obviously, myself, I'm a God-fearing Christian man. I believe in grace. I am thankful for the grace that God gives me. How does that translate towards those that do evil? I'm not talking like they stole your stuffed animal or they, took your lunch money. I'm talking pure evil, took a life, murderous creatures that are resentful, and maybe would change their ways, but how do we trust that? How should we treat them as a society? Another comment here. It's funny how they say that the Salvadorian people traded their freedom for security like they had freedom before. Yeah, this is an interesting take where there's controversy around Nayib Bukele's tactics, lots of them calling them dictator style tactics. So why does this matter to America, to North America, to you and I watching this right now from the safety of our Western culture? Well, Nayib Bukele effectively offered to President Trump, hey, we've got these massive mega prisons. We got to pay for them somehow. Why don't you send us your bad guys too?
So he goes to meet with Bukele, and Bukele offers to take the inmates from U.S. there at their jail that they have. You have to see this place. Go ahead, Rob. Play this clip of Marco Rubio.
He has agreed to accept for deportation any illegal alien in the United States who is a criminal from any nationality, be they MS-13 or Tren de Aragua, and house them in his jails. He has offered to house in his jails dangerous American criminals in custody in our country, including those of U.S. citizenship and legal residence.
This is what he posted. We have offered U.S. the opportunity to outsource. We are willing to take in only convicted criminals, including convicted U.S. citizens, into our mega prison in exchange for a fee. The fee would be relatively low for the U.S., but significant for us, making our entire prison system sustainable. Look at that right there, okay?
You know what that statement means?
Yeah, I know what that means.
We'll take the revenue.
Taxpayers pay $47,000 per year per inmate. But in El Salvador, it's going to be roughly $10,000 or $11,000.
So we're saving $30,000.
$36,000.
Weird.
Right.
So stick with me here. So far, we've got El Salvador increasing their safety, becoming safer than the US, as safe as Canada in the span of 10 years. How did they do it? Mega prisons, lock up everyone. But that costs money. So Nayib Bukele offers a reward or a deal with President Trump. It's like, hey, you have the opposite problem of us. You don't have enough prison space. I have lots of prison space. You're paying too much per prisoner. I'm paying way less than you. Let's make a trade. Value for value. Look at the free market of prisoners working and governments literally working together to, hopefully have a win-win outcome. This commenter hits it on the head where he says, this is the result of applying a consequentialist moral philosophy. Actions aren't right or wrong per se, but it depends on the outcome. In practical terms, I've always wondered how long this policy of skipping due process and imprisoning guys with tattoos could last. It seems logical that it has an expiration date. And perhaps Trump is helping expose some of the inherent issues. So what this means is President Bukele goes on a mass tyrant raid. Anyone with a gang tattoo, affiliation with a gang, if you do anything wrong or we suspect you of doing anything wrong, you're done. You're going to massive jail. But as we just heard, it costs them $10,000 or $11,000 per inmate per year. And when your inmate population triples over the course of the year, you can imagine your costs triple over the course of the year. El Salvador, they're aping into Bitcoin. They don't have this IMF money, or they didn't until very recently. How do you fund that? Frankly, I think it's kind of smart. I think it's smart for Nayib Bukele to outsource this mega prison that they've built. It's like, hey, we're doing something. It's cheaper for you guys. It's really, really helpful for us in terms of revenue. We're going to work for the U.S. The El Salvadorian government basically just became an arm of U.S. imprisonment.
In front of our cameras, the prisoners receive their medication. And when they are allowed 1 hour out of their cells, it is to sing religious hymns in unison.
1 hour out of your cell. You're in your cell for 23 hours a day. And the 1 hour you get out, religious hymns.
Estos son los programas generales que están enfocados en el rescate de valores a través de la parte espiritual. Eso es algo bien importante. El privado de libertad necesita algo en qué creer. Y qué mejor hacerlo a través de la práctica de la religión.
Wow, prisoners need something to believe in. You need to have, this is like the classic AA, the addiction reform. Any type of reformation has to have a greater power at the head. You need to be looking upwards, having something, someone to put your faith, put your love, put your mind. And without that, without the divine, this is not successful. I do not think prisoners will be able to get out. You're not getting these interviews, and who knows? This is obviously, staged, and there's camera crews and lighting, and, they're probably just excited to see people that's not in their normal day-to-day. But I do think this is one of the greatest advancements is, ironically, all of their freedoms stripped away. You have one person dictating what they need to be doing.
To support his argument, the director has chosen a prisoner, the only one authorized to speak to us, a member of Barrio 18, sentenced to 16 years in prison for extortion.
Un trato muy bien, ¿verdad? No, los agentes no abusan de nosotros en ningún momento.
16 years, notably, he's going to get out when he looks like he's probably in his mid-20s. He'll get out before he's 40. They are hopefully, and we're going to watch the video, but hopefully they're going to set this man up to be successful for 40 more years post-reintegration into the world.
Lo clínico nos da prioridad a los agentes. Cuando pasa algo, puede ver lo que son mis dedos, pues yo andaba fregado, pues yo reporté y me excedieron, ¿verdad? No vivimos sobrepoblados, no miramos nada mal el penal de Secor.
This man, who can't find fault with the conditions of his detention, used to be one of the most fearsome Maras, as his tattoos demonstrate. Only gang leaders have them on their faces. The tear in the corner of his eye indicates that he has committed murder.
tenemos derecho a una segunda oportunidad, ¿verdad? Y
¿Cree que es posible cambiar?
sí podemos cambiar, sí podemos cambiar. Somos humanos, todo ser humano tiene errores, el único perfecto es Dios. Y más que todo a las madres, ¿verdad? De que inciten a sus hijos a de que no agarren este camino.
That's so heavy. Listen to these, saying the right things, right? Only God is perfect. Man has taken us away. He's talking about the journey inside of him, especially as a young man. I, take back what I said. He looks a bit older than mid-20s, but if you're a young boy, you get wrapped up, caught up in the wrong group, the wrong type of people. You make bad decisions. Your life is influenced in the wrong way. You're not thinking from a first principle perspective. If you commit a crime when you're 21, a brutal crime, you take lives. What type of reformation? How do we trust and know that the reformation done in prison is enough to actually let you reintegrate, to give you privileges or rights back that you took from someone else permanently? What should we look at as the ultimate end goal for punishment? From my perspective, the ultimate success of any prison is that you have 100% people getting reintegrated into the world with a 0% re-offense rate. That's the end goal. That's what we want. And honestly, I think that there are two sides of this. You look at this maximum security, 23 hours in a cell. You got religion forced down your throat. I think this is one way to look at it. And as we're going to check out in a second, you've got Finland taking the complete opposite approach. And it kind of begs the question, is there another way to deal with prisoners? Can you do anything other than maximum security, strict rules, and hardcore behavior management?
This man is serving a life sentence for murder.
I'm sorry, I'm a little body conscious, as you can see. I've gained a few pounds.
A dip in the frozen lake behind the prison is part of his regular workout routine.
No problem.
Now, he looks like any normal fitness influencer.
Okay, your turn.
Welcome to life in one of Finland's open prisons. There are no cell blocks here, just dormitories. Inmates come and go in their own cars. When Matti isn't at the nearby university campus, he's in his dorm room, studying for a career in tech.
Some entrepreneurship books, marketing books, user experience, all kinds of digital and IT studies.
Wow. That really surprises me. You'd think when incarceration is good, you would want, or you would have, maybe not an incentive to be incarcerated, but you wouldn't think it would be declining like that. It's interesting.
And we have this kind of normality principle that prisoners should be treated equally, even though they are prisoners, but they should have access to same services and rights as other citizens.
In recent years, Finland has been named the happiest and safest country in the world. Citizens here enjoy generous public benefits, universal healthcare, subsidised daycare for children, and free college tuition. Promotional films like this, produced by Finland's Criminal Sanctions Agency, document how prisoners are eased back into society, with work opportunities and help from counsellors. And the incarceration rate here is one of the lowest in Europe, a quarter of what it was in 1950.
So this is the right mindset. I am pro this mindset. And the stats, the facts, they're there. The first principle just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make sense that you're not punishing for crimes. You're taking them in. Maybe we look at it like a rehabilitation program, not an imprisonment program, which again, I am for taking them in, helping them to understand, there is more life than this inside your controlled environment. The question becomes, can we and will they stay on the straight and narrow when they're left to their own devices, when they're left, back reintegrating old friends, old habits? Like, you don't just get caught doing murder because you're with good people in your life. Something has to go wrong. And I think, when they're reintegrated, what happens? Are they able to? It sounds like 1 in 3 are not able to break out of those old habits. So does that mean it's worth it? Or is the risk still outweighed of the success?
In Finland, only 1 in 3 former convicts ends up back in prison. Compare that to the United States, where 2 out of 3 get locked up again within 2 years of release. A 2018 bill included sentencing reforms meant to reduce what is referred to as recidivism, but they only apply to inmates in federal custody. Just 10% of the 2.3 million people incarcerated in the US. Critics say the 2018 reforms are only a small first step and fall far short of the kind of meaningful change Finland is so proud of. The scale, of course, is different. Today there are fewer than 3,000 in the Finnish prison system. The number of people behind bars in the US is equal to half of Finland's total population.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Give people a chance. And so if we have this thought experiment, we have kind of this, sovereign individual world, this pretty decentralized, libertarian world with small governments, limited amount of people making decisions for you, with empowering you as a citizen to make your own decisions. How does prison look? Absolutely zero tolerance for a misstep, absolutely zero tolerance for even maybe association of misstep, or is it this Finland approach, which looks like quite open, quite pleasant, if you could say that about jail, quite nice? How would we, as sovereign individuals, want to treat our community of criminals? Frankly, and at first glance, I am drawn towards the El Salvador model. I think a zero tolerance approach, while it probably captures some missteps, I think overall it's safety. But as I'm saying these words, I'm caught in this communist hole where who decides what is safety? Obviously, there's some objective metrics, but we've seen globalists stretch that before under the logic that I am currently using. And then on the other side, the Finland approach, which seems like it's, very similar to Canada and the USA, it makes you wonder, why is that working and not the system that we have in Canada, USA? Is Finland an outlier? Is this the model that we should be after? At first glance, I'm kind of leaning one way, but then as I think about it a little bit more, I'm kind of leaning the other way. Maybe it's a hybrid of two where, you kind of have this strict zero tolerance approach with more of a reformation strategy. Of course, if you know what reformation looks like, then maybe it works. But then again, how do you decide? So the question's passed back to you guys, in the comments right now. Which approach is better? How does your system look? Think about, forget ideology, forget what actually exists, which way do we lean? If we think about, in the same way we talk about convenience and security, you have authoritarian and you have freedom. And on the authoritarian side, you have a lot less freedom. You have a lot less chance. You have to play by the rules. And frankly, if the rules are good, then the rules are good. But the problem is what happens when the person in charge making the rules changes and then a pile of new rules come in. This is the risk with the authoritarian approach. So question back to you guys. Which is the better way? Is it circumstantial? How do we pick? What would you do in your sovereign nation that you are building in your mind, that you're stacking sats for in your mind, the citadel of the future? What do you have? How do you handle lethal, dangerous people? And how do you reform them to introduce them or not into society? My name's Adam. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these types of thought exercises, watching me wrestle the morality of the world and discussing it with you on how to future-proof your life, subscribe, comment down below what you think, and as always, stay sovereign.